Hello, ladies and a few good men, and welcome to today's episode of the Autoimmune Rehab Podcast. I would like to highlight my new ebook compilation where I have included all of the contact information from prior guests on this show, as well as summaries of the different lessons and things that they have to share with us. You can grab your copy by going to the website associated with this podcast at autoimmunerehab.com. Now, with no further ado, let's get started with today's episode. And in today's episode, I am going to talk about adrenal fatigue recovery. And this is a topic that I get asked a lot. So some of the things we'll be talking about include things like what is adrenal fatigue to begin with, and how do you actually accomplish adrenal fatigue recovery, and why is it a crucial part of your healing when it comes to recovering from an autoimmune condition. So to summarize what we're going to be covering today, the first thing we're going to talk about is what is adrenal fatigue. Then we're going to talk about why the topic of adrenal fatigue is a little bit controversial. Then thirdly, we will talk about why does it happen and how do you get adrenal fatigue? And along with that a little bit, how do you know that you actually have it? And then number four, how does stress impact your adrenal glands and adrenal fatigue? And then last but not least, what do you do to recover from adrenal fatigue? So first off, what is adrenal fatigue? Well, the scientific and basic definition of adrenal fatigue is when the adrenal glands in your body get fatigued or tired, and they get a little bit worn out and they start to malfunction and they don't function as well as they should. And your adrenal glands are what helps promote a lot of energy and vitality. So if you struggle with a lot of fatigue, even though you're still sleeping, or brain fog, things like that, a lot of times the adrenal glands can be responsible for that. And a lot of times what people don't realize is that adrenal fatigue often accompanies other autoimmune conditions like thyroid issues like Hashimoto's and Graves' disease, for example, are good ones where the pressure on the adrenal glands can cause or make autoimmune conditions of the thyroid worse. However, you can also have adrenal fatigue even with other autoimmune conditions as well. So that's the basic definition. There probably are other definitions out there, but that's really the short version on it. So why is adrenal fatigue controversial? Well, the main reason why adrenal fatigue is controversial is because it is not considered by a lot of, especially medical doctors, to be considered an actual health issue or an actual diagnosable medical condition, if you will. However, a lot of chiropractors and acupuncturists and naturopathic doctors have stated that it is an actual condition and it does actually need to be addressed. And especially, like I already mentioned, if you have thyroid issues or other autoimmune issues, or are tired a lot, you definitely need to address your adrenal fatigue. So that's why it's controversial, is because in some circles, it's not considered an actual medical diagnosis. But I would argue that even if, you may or may not consider it an actual medical diagnosis, it definitely is something that you need to address in order to help you truly attain good health and wellness and vitality and help with your autoimmune healing journey. So why does it happen? So adrenal fatigue, there's a lot of different things that can cause adrenal fatigue, but a couple of the main things that really cause it are, number one, too much stress, and number two, a lack of sleep. And then sometimes different people will say that different kinds of dietary things can cause adrenal fatigue as well. And then last but not least, adrenal fatigue can also be caused by toxins and things that get into your body. So if you have some heavy metals, if you have mercury poisoning, different things like that, you can end up with some adrenal fatigue. And I'm not an expert on this specific aspect of it. There are likely some challenges around adrenal fatigue could potentially cause or, happen as a result of different aspects of low energy related to, like energy healing, things like that can also help with adrenal fatigue. So then the next aspect to talk about here a little bit is how does stress impact it? So stress can really have a big negative consequence on your adrenal glands. And when you have too much stress, your adrenal glands can get tired, they can get fatigued, they can swell. And So, a lot more medical doctors are starting to recognize that stress can be at the root cause of more than half of all diagnosed illnesses, and adrenal fatigue is no exemption. So, if you are experiencing a lot of stress, that could be one of the keys leading into the next aspect of what do you need to do to recover from adrenal fatigue. And the first thing that I would say is to take a look at the stress in your life and determine if there are ways that you can help reduce that stress. Second thing I would do is ask yourself, do I also have thyroid or other autoimmune problems? And what can I do to help support the adrenal glands that in return may help with the thyroid, other things like that? There are also different supplements and herbal remedies out there. If you are interested in that a lot specifically, you can reach out and we can have a conversation about it. I'm not a big expert in that area, but I do know that there are some things you definitely want to avoid with adrenal fatigue recovery. And some of these things will include things like caffeine and sugar, which I know are big triggers. And a lot of you are probably saying, oh, but I need my coffee or my Coke or whatever. But the reality is, in order to really have some adrenal fatigue recovery, especially if it's a big problem for you, you really should give up sugar and you really should give up caffeine. And there are, like I said, natural ways to boost your energy. Like, for example, I like to use a combination of wild orange and peppermint essential oil. That works really well for me. Also, there are, like I said, different supplements out there that are not do not contain caffeine or that are more of a natural source of caffeine in some cases, or energy boosters. So things like a supplement that contains green tea, for example, also different things like that. And so another way to also really help with adrenal fatigue recovery is to make sure that you're always getting proper sleep, because my personal experience has been with it, and yes, I did have some adrenal fatigue issues, and maybe depending on who you talk to, might still have a little bit of a struggle with that, is that you want to get at least a full 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night and have, really help support your adrenals in that way. And also, I feel like meditation and yoga can really, really help. And there is an older but still really great episode on this podcast talking all about yoga to help with not just adrenal fatigue, but with autoimmune and other things like that. So you could go back and listen to that episode. The point is that adrenal fatigue recovery is a process. It's not something you're just going to snap your fingers and oops, okay, there we go. I'm all good now with this adrenal fatigue. And so really addressing your root cause, looking at stress, looking at other aspects of your body that may be affected by your adrenal glands, getting adequate sleep, getting to the root cause, and then, making those dietary changes that you need to, with especially things like caffeine and sugar, can all really lead to helping to assist you with adrenal fatigue recovery. And like I said, if you've tried a lot of those things and they're not working for you, you may need to consult a practitioner that knows more about it than I do in order to get some more professional help. And I would really recommend primarily that you consider some kind of a chiropractor or acupuncturist who specializes in that. And the biggest advantage to doing like the acupuncture route, for example, is that a lot of times they're really expert in a lot of different herbs and Chinese medicine that can really support adrenal fatigue recovery. And my experience with that kind of thing has been really, really good with that. So that is going to be all for this episode. I invite you to stay tuned for future episodes, and please share this with anybody else you feel like can benefit. And if you have an autoimmune story that you'd like to share about your recovery, please reach out and I would be happy to interview you and feature you here on this podcast. Take care. Thanks again. And like I said, please go to autoimmunerehab.com to download the ebook with the contact information and summaries of all of my guest episodes. Take care and have a great day, and talk to you soon on another episode of the Autoimmune Rehab Podcast.